Welcome back, everyone, to Vox Markets. My name is Paul Hill, and I'm delighted today to have with me special guest CEO Stuart Gall of Intelligent Ultrasound. That's ticker MED. Morning, Stuart.
Good morning.
Now, I understand that the sort of ultrasound market is worth about $6 billion per annum globally and is growing in the sort of the mid-single digits. Where exactly does Intelligent Ultrasound operate within that whole large ecosystem?
Yeah, good question. So we are a provider of training simulation tools to people that want to learn how to do ultrasound, so doctors that are training, sonographers that are training. But we also expanded the business 2 years ago so that we can provide software tools to the OEMs, the big manufacturers, that actually get embedded into their ultrasound machines to help clinicians scan faster and scan better. So we sort of sit at the beginning in training and then at the end in the clinic where you get used in the hospitals.
And where are most of the sales at the moment? Is it all in the simulator side?
Yeah, so the business obviously started as a simulation company. So all our revenue is currently coming from the simulation division. Obviously, clearly, we hope over the coming years, that's then going to be bolstered by growing revenues from the clinical software side of the business.
And what are the underlying drivers? Let's just take of each of those sectors. Let's take the sort of the simulator side, the fundamentals. I mean, I remember as a kid, I had a bit of a dodgy sort of like ticker as much as anything. So I had to have an ultrasound. Now, one of the advantages I found with ultrasound was that it didn't give any radiation and it was quick and easy, etc. What is sort of like the benefits of using ultrasound compared to the newer sort of like the MRIs and the CT scan? You know, what's actually going to fundamentally drive intelligent ultrasound and that technology going forward?
Yeah, well, so ultrasound is a growing diagnostic tool within hospitals. And as you say, that's because it doesn't emit radiation. It's obviously portable, it's cheaper. And, you know, one of the things that we found with the whole pandemic, global pandemic, has been that ultrasound, because of its portability, means that it's much easier to disinfect. It's a great diagnostic tool because you take the device to the patient. You don't have to wheel the patient who might be infected all the way through the wards to get them through to an imaging center. So all those combined together have meant that ultrasound is seen as having a great future. It's increasingly used all throughout specialities and hospitals. And so being in this sector and providing tools that can help make it simpler to use, train more people to use it, we think that's a growth area and an exciting area to be.
Is it likely there's going to be more and more people who are going to be trained on it? I mean, just sort of like thinking out the box here. I mean, if people are trying, if the hospital authorities are trying to push down to points of care or in community treatments, then is it likely more people are going to be using sort of like ultrasound? So rather than actually train nurses in hospitals, there's going to be nurses in GPs or even people sort of home visiting and maybe even telemedicine because of the actual the portability and the size and the less sort of hazardous nature of ultrasound.
Yeah, I mean, so the other side of ultrasound is that it's you need to have a skill to use it. So it's not that simple to learn. You're looking at a grayscale image in 2D of a 3D object, and it's all about the hand to eye coordination and control of that probe in micro movements to get the right image, the right planes of view. So it's a skill to learn. And that's why, in effect, we started in simulation, because simulation tools, a bit like aviation simulators, teaching pilots how to fly planes, this is all about trying to teach a doctor or a sonographer how to scan. And now you're increasingly seeing software tools that are trying to help make that simpler. So if there are certain areas of scanning where you could enable more people to scan by giving them a software tool that helps them do it, that's where we see a certain amount of expansion coming from. But we also see that the fact the market is seeing increasingly companies like Butterfly, which are bringing out smaller, lower cost devices and trying to, in effect, make the stethoscope the future so that every doctor has an ultrasound device rather than a stethoscope. They've got a small pocket ultrasound device. Certainly, that's another area where we see there could be expansion into emergency medicine, GP clinics, etc. And ultimately, I think, where you might be able to even scan yourself at home.
So maybe the Butterfly network, that is the sort of the smartphone enabled application that might be used in sort of, just say in homes or even in emerging markets where they don't have access to hospitals or GP surgeries, sort of, or even potentially in emergencies at sort of like car accidents and stuff.
Yeah, so I think so. The Butterfly product is a plug-in to your iPhone. Obviously, you still need their ultrasound probe, but there are tools to help you, in effect, scan with that. And I think it's, the cost there is helping drive its accessibility into more areas. But yes, certainly that means there's the potential to scan outside the hospital because you've got a cheaper device. And I think one of the areas they're looking at is to push out to third world and developing countries, etc. So
if ultrasound as a technology versus sort of MRI or radiation, X-rays, etc., is cheaper, simpler, and safer to use, then one thing, when my wife was pregnant, this is like 25 years ago, we had an ultrasound scan of her stomach, and it was difficult for the clinician to actually tell whether it was a boy or girl because the image was fuzzy. Now, this is the great sort of like the gold standard, whereby if you overlay your AI software and predictive analysis to help the clinician with the diagnosis and to interpret what they're actually seeing, that then improves the actual diagnostics and treatment capability, efficiency of the ultrasound device up to sort of like the more crisper images you get of, sort of like an MRI on soft tissue. So is that the beauty of it?
Well, I think, to be fair, I think ultrasound machines only, the modern, there's obviously a variety of ultrasound machines. As technology moves forward, the imaging, the quality of imaging gets considerably better. So if you compare an ultrasound machine to 20 years ago to one today, they're phenomenal images. If you look at, GE, Philips, Sonosite, etc., they're all fabulous machines giving you beautiful images. But also there's the skill in how you acquire that image, which is not that easy. So we're I think there's both ends. The manufacturers are clearly making fabulous machines with high resolution, etc. But then there's also, can you make it easier for less skilled people to use them in different areas? And the difference between, the different diagnostic tools is that, ultrasound can give you a fabulous image, but so can MRI, for example, but you use them for identifying different conditions, and it's what's appropriate in cost, what's appropriate in the environment, etc., in terms of what diagnostic tool you use.
Okay.
Ultrasound is obviously clearly a big part of the diagnostics that are going on within hospitals.
Okay, so just coming back then to the sort of the first half results from last week.
Yeah.
I think the company was very much similar to other sort of elective procedure type businesses. I did notice that Medica, who do sort of like analysis of radiology images, their sales were down 20-25%, and I noticed yours were likewise. Now, in terms of if all the sales are simulator sales in the first half, and I saw the sales drop from 3.1, I think, to 2.5 in the first 6 months. Yeah. Of all those orders, have any been cancelled, or have they just really been simply deferred to the right for simulators?
Well, we clearly, obviously, we hope many of them have been deferred.
Yes.
It's more about the environment. Obviously, we're operating an environment where to sell our product, which is a tactile product, you've got to touch and feel it, to experience it and realize that it does give you this real feel of learning. You have to do that by going into hospital. And we lost the ability to do that, certainly in the UK from March, in America from the end of February, hospitals were shutting on the West Coast. In China, they were shutting from January. So, we sell our simulators globally. We lost the ability to get into hospitals. So we clearly are hoping purchases are deferred until you can get back in. Clearly, the spend profiles where hospitals have taken money and said, right, well, okay, we're just going to, you're not going to have that money this year. This year, this money is going on frontline services for COVID. Hopefully, clearly, you'll have it in 2021. So we were 20% down. Actually, we think that was a good performance, to be honest. I think when you look at the fact we couldn't get in, we've done well. And, our aim is we've just got to keep that going. I think 2020 is for most businesses about just getting through it and hopefully getting into the clearer waters of 2021 when everything hopefully has calmed down, vaccines are starting to appear, and we get back to a little bit more normality in business life.
Are you seeing any green shoots at all? I did notice that Bristol Myers Squibb, when they came out their quarterly results last week, they did talk about they were getting access into hospitals now for their sort of non-COVID products. Is it still too early for you guys, or is it? I mean, are you still more interest?
I think clearly we have been able to get back into a certain amount of hospitals. Some have been harder, some have been easier. I think, our green shoots was that the UK did well. I mean, we had a really good year first half in the UK. Sales were double. And a lot of that was driven by a COVID-related training product. So we have a simulator that in March we brought out a COVID-19 training module. We rushed it through. It met the needs of teaching frontline clinicians so that less skilled people could use ultrasound to quickly identify what the key indicators of COVID were. We got that into the Nightingale Hospital for free, trained all the clinicians that were going to be used in the Nightingale if we had this flood of COVID patients. And that has set us up well for then selling that system into the UK. We're hoping America, which is slightly different, because America obviously is all private hospital network, driven by discretionary spend. We're hoping that where we did a similar thing in New York with the VA Harbor Healthcare network, and they trained hundreds of frontline workers to use ultrasound using our training simulator, that again has set us up well for the second half, in that hopefully selling more of our bodywork simulator in the US. So we clearly hope we've done the legwork in the first half to enable us, as the green shoots come through, to be able to get into the hospitals and sell. But we're also working on the slightly new environment of, if you can't get a sell into hospitals, well, what are you going to do about it? So can you do more sophisticated web-based demonstrations with multiple camera views so people can actually get a feel through the web of the product you've got, followed, supported by case studies and other companies that bought it, to enable us to continue to sell without having to get in. And that's what we're working on at the moment, to make sure that that keeps our lead generation up, our ability to touch and with contact with hospitals, etc., and then clearly, hopefully, to continue selling products.
And before we move on to the AI side of it for sort of next year, what is assuming that we have COVID out of the way, what would be the underlying market growth rate for the simulator side? It would be sort of mid-single digits?
Well, we don't have any forecasts in the market at the moment.
No, not company. I'm talking about the broader market for simulators.
Well, yes. I mean, clearly we'd hope that. I mean, if you look at what we've done historically, we've grown 20 to 30%. So we obviously hope we could continue to do that. And if you look at an interesting spin out of our clinical AI side of the business, is that we've actually been able to develop 2 new AI-based simulator products for teaching in hospitals. So whereas we currently got 3 simulator platforms that we sell, Scan Trainer for obstetrics, HeartWorks into cardiac, and then BodyWorks into POCUS emergency care and intensive care, we're adding a neonate product for the neonate pediatric market, and then we've got a needling product coming out. So we're actually going to have 5 products that will hopefully be delivering sales from 2021 onwards compared to 3. So that should be, I think the key for any business is keep your sales going as much as possible, but make sure underneath all the development work you're doing for 2021 is all coming through and not being delayed. And that's what we've been doing.
Okay. And then just talking about that, and so moving on now to the AI and to the software side of it. So I saw last year you signed a sort of flagship contract, a breakthrough contract with a large ultrasound equipment OEM.
Yeah.
And what sort of scale should investors think about that in terms of potential revenues once we get through the COVID valley? I mean, I did notice that Senkos, the broker at that time, came with an estimate. It wasn't very, should we say, accurate estimate. It was somewhere between 1 million and 20 million of turnover, and they'd put a mean of about 5. But we are still talking big numbers just for one contract. Is there any reason to believe that that is sort of out of the question, or is that sort of still the sort of multi-million pound sort of run rate once it gets moving, that type of contract?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of factors to that. I mean, obviously, clearly the overriding one is that this is all commercially undisclosed at the moment, so I can't reveal anything. It's in our agreement.
It's just broad brush.
But broadly, clearly for us, we think it's a game-changing agreement because it's with a major manufacturer. So major manufacturers sell known amounts of units pretty much every year. So if your product's on those units, even though they will roll out, they're not going to suddenly be on every single unit, but they roll out. It's all about how many people turn our software on. So the software is embedded into the ultrasound machine. If the customer then activates it by buying it, we obviously get a royalty. So that's going to be the key rate for us. And that's why that number at the moment is quite vague in the market. And until we actually see those rates, it'll be hard to actually tie those down, because clearly if you get only 5% of customers turning it on compared to 100%, that's why you can have such a big variation in number. And
is the royalty on a per machine basis? And all the sales recognised up front, or is it on a sort of like a scan basis and recognised over a longer period?
No, it's royalty per machine. So
on the machine, is it?
Yeah.
And it's taken up front, is it? So effectively, it's a sort of like X amount.
It's a one-off payment. I mean, most of the whole ultrasound market is based on, it's a capex sale.
Yeah, okay.
You buy everything up front. Hospitals don't want to invest in something that they then next year don't have an operating budget that's as big, and then can't use the kit they bought the year before.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Generally, the market at the moment doesn't support recurring revenue-based deals, etc.
Yeah, okay.
So yes.
And what about sort of retrofitting, or is it all new equipment because it needs the right sort of level of technology inside the hardware?
Yeah, I mean, I think with a new piece of kit, you've got a lot of processing power for any AI software, and so it's got to fit into that new environment. So it's into new machines. That is that's our first product area, but we have 3 product development areas in terms of the AI side of the business. Our second area is the ScanNav Anatomy, and this is basically a product that's all aimed at automated anatomy highlighting, and this is for ultrasound guided needling, so peripheral nerve blocks. Think about them as local anaesthetic.
Is this like augmented reality, sort of like
no.
helping the clinician at the point of operation?
Okay. Well, interesting. Yes, it is. Yes, I guess, but different. I mean, augmented reality, people think of that as putting the glasses on and you're seeing an image in front of you. This is overlaying it on a second screen for the ultrasound.
Yeah.
I think hopefully you might be able to put up a picture of that, because there's one of those in the investor presentation that actually show the product, because the product has been submitted for CE filing now. So it's a real product that you can actually see how it fits onto an existing ultrasound machine. You flip the screen up, you can then see basically videos of how to do blocks. So for trainees, they can learn by watching the video and then doing them, practicing. But it also then automatically highlights the image to show you the nerves, the arteries, the bone, muscle, etc. So you can see where the block should be going and identify those small structures live while you're scanning. So that product is will come to market 2 ways. One is it will be a retrofit black box, so you can fit it onto any cart-based ultrasound machine, and we will sell those either into the aftermarket or through manufacturers. And then hopefully as well, we'll sign a deal with the manufacturer to have it integrated into future new machines. So it's a sort of twin-pronged approach.
And then Stuart, just for investors, sort of like how should they think about sort of new contracts with other large OEMs or even smaller OEMs who do ultrasound? You've got your first flagship sort of like big endorsements and upselling that. Is it the sort of the OEMs have got their own partners, or that they're developing this themselves, or is there still sort of like quite a lot of empty space there for innovative businesses like Intelligent Ultrasound to take the opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think this is a competitive marketplace. Everyone is trying to do tools in this space. The OEMs themselves, small companies and large companies, are all competing to try and bring products to marketplace. We think we're well placed within that race, but it is by product and by speciality, looking to find partners, looking to bring out products that you can sell yourself. I think there's a lot of routes to market, and there's a lot of space for everyone to play in. Okay.
And then sort of like just big picture wise, I mean, last year I think the sales were roughly around about, was it £6 million or something on the run rate? Right. That's for simulators. And if we add on sort of like the AI side of it, the sort of like, what sort of size business should investors sort of think about in 3 to 5 years? I mean, you would hope that it'd be over 10 million, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, again, always difficult for a listed company to say that because you're not allowed to forecast, etc.
Well, you're not forecasting because it's 3 to 5 years.
I know. So, clearly our aim as a business is to be considerably bigger than that. So, if you think about our simulation business, well, if it's doing 6 million with 3 products and you're going to be 5 products over the next couple of years, and then you're going to add on 5, we're hoping between 3 to 5 to 8 different license agreements or direct sales route for hardware, in the AI side, you can see that expect that to be considerably bigger. We've clearly always wanted to be a business that's valued at more like 100 million plus, rather than one that's valued at 30 million plus. And obviously, to be a 100 million valued plus business, you're going to have to start to generate 5-10 million pounds profit, and we've clearly got to put ourselves in the longer term into position to do that. That's why we're here. We're clearly, at the moment, we're an investment business. We lose money. It's about pushing ourselves into a position where all these product lines are starting to generate us revenue over the next 3 to 5 years, which clearly transforms our business. And obviously the AI side, when you're doing royalty-based agreements, you're getting 100% gross margin on those. If we're selling black boxes, more like 70 to 80%, but still it's a considerable change to our revenue profile.
And if I put a sort of like hopefully not that crazy a number out, sort of 20 million, would that not be out the question, say, by 2025 or 2024?
And just to clarify, you're talking 20 million revenue.
Yes, I am. Yes, from 6.
Yes, and so
in 5 years' time.
We currently do 6, and clearly, I hope that we will be in that sort of scale of revenue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I only do that really for investors because, looking at your market cap, it's roughly around about 32, 33 million. You've got 10 million of cash, so you have an enterprise value of around about sort of like 20, 25 million. Which would then, on a 20 million pound turnover business, would be only one-time sales. So normally these diagnostic high value AI businesses will go for 5 times sales. Correct. So you're right, you get to around about your 100 mil, which gives, obviously, nobody's got a crystal ball and can see the future, but I thought just for investors, it would be worth just running through that because it gives them a feel of the scale of the appreciation in the shares at currently around about 12p. If you did 5 times that, we're talking 60. You haven't got to be Einstein to do those type of numbers. So just gives people a sort of envelope of opportunity over a longer period. Just to get through, just on the COVID side, the cash burn in the first half was 1.5 million. Is that? I'm given you've got 10 million, you have plenty of cash, but was that matched by some VAT and some deferred taxes payments, or is that really a straight number that investors should think for the second half as well?
Well, so there was a little bit of, we had the paycheck loan protection scheme in the US. And second half, there's a bit more cost in because we're moving products through regulatory approval. We are expanding the teams because we do have this third leg of our AI development, which is where we're trying to bring out very quickly. Sorry, that's someone calling me. We couldn't do it. So they're doing, we're doing 2 products that we're trying to bring out in this third leg, which is called ScanNav Detect. And one of those is for COVID. So it's a lung detection product to enable less skilled people to quickly identify whether there's COVID evident in the lungs. And that product has been accelerated from virtual standard start in April, May, to having our first proof of concept models working, and obviously now trying to, before the end of the year, have a product that's gone into regulatory approval. So we're accelerating recruitment of AI software engineers, development engineers, etc., to bring these multiple products to marketplace. We do have a multi-platform, multi-product strategy to get, as I've said, between 3-10 different licenses into the market over the next 3 to 5 years to justify the sort of numbers that we've been talking about earlier. And that's certainly our aim, and that's what we're doing in terms of development. So I think you will see the more overheads going up, but obviously we clearly want to compensate that by simulation revenue sales. But generally, if we're burning £350 a month, you can see that we've clearly got enough time, even if we're not increasing sales, to get to those AI products coming in.
Yeah. And is it really an organic growth strategy, or is there any M&A that you might consider at some time? Or is it, you seem to have a huge trajectory anyway.
Yeah, well, I think at the moment it's all organic, but clearly any company would look to be opportunistic if it was appropriate. At the moment, we're focused on deliver these products. Our shareholders have been brilliantly supportive. We've raised money every year for the last 4 years. We've now actually got the first time where we've actually got more than 12 months money in the bank and can really focus on making everything happen and not worry about raising money. And that's what we're doing. Deliver these products to marketplace, be first to market in a number of areas, and start generating revenue from that AI product, so that when you put the 2 businesses together, we become something that looks quite exciting.
And then just finally, with the news flow for the rest of the year, for the rest of the calendar 2020, what should investors sort of expect going forward?
Well, I think obviously from our side, it will be AI development. So the anatomy guide submitted for FDA, obviously first AI product launch. We'd like to see that happen as soon as possible from our manufacturer. And then the next product, first sales of those products, and then approval of of the second and third range of products. So moving all the AI products forward and press releases that relate to that.
And the FDA approval is it done by the company, by Intelligent Ultrasound, or is it done by the device manufacturer that you license the product to?
So all the different products vary. So if we've gone through a manufacturer, that would be with the manufacturer. If we're bringing the black box ourselves, then we do it ourselves. So,
okay.
So the anatomy product is we are submitting that filing. That filing's already been submitted for CE marking, and it's FDA imminent.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks very much, Stuart. That's absolutely, very insightful, and thanks for your time, and look forward to hearing how the business progresses going forward.
Yeah, thanks very much.